Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of the hour. Another body of hostage returned from Gaza has been identified. The IDF has confirmed that the body of the 61-year-old Lior Rudaeff is a member of Israel's Civil Defense Squad. Israel now awaits bodies of 5 slain hostages still held in the Gaza Strip. Russia has launched a large-scale drone assault on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. The strikes have resulted in 1 casualty and have caused power outages across multiple regions, as per Kyiv officials. US Supreme Court allows US President Donald Trump to pause full SNAP payments while 42 million low-income Americans face food aid delays. The stay will remain in place until the first US Circuit Court of Appeals in Boston rules on whether to block the lower court's decision. The US District Judge has ruled that President Donald Trump illegally deployed National Guard troops to Portland and suppressed protests. The decision bars future use of US military force in cities to police civil unrest. US President Donald Trump says no American officials will attend this year's G20 summit in South Africa, claiming white farmers face genocide. Pretoria rejects the allegation, calling it a false and dangerous distortion of reality. The third round of peace talks between Pakistan and Afghanistan have ended without any agreement on tackling cross-border terrorism. Both the sides are trading blame for the collapse of negotiations, and the Taliban government have accused Pakistan of adopting an irresponsible and uncooperative stance. Iran's embassy in Mexico rejects US and Israeli claims it planned to assassinate Israel's ambassador in Mexico City. Tehran calls the allegation a big lie aimed at damaging relations between Iran and Mexico. North Korea's defense minister, No Kwang-chol, warns of more offensive action after a missile test and condemns US-South Korea security talks. Seoul and Washington call the launch destabilizing amid new US sanctions on North Korean entities. Now, our top story, we start in West Asia, and Israel has confirmed that the latest body returned from Gaza by Hamas is that of Israeli-Argentinian hostage Lior Rudaeff. Rudaeff, who was 61, was killed in the near Yitzhak kibbutz during the Hamas cross-border attack on October the 7th in 2023, while protecting his community alongside 4 other residents. His remains were taken to Gaza on the day of the attack and held there until Friday, where they were returned under a US brokered ceasefire deal that took effect last month. The military has said that the IDF representatives informed the family that Rudaeff had been returned for burial. Of the 28 deceased hostages agreed to be returned, 23 have been handed over so far, including 20 Israelis. Israel accuses Hamas of delaying the return of the remaining bodies, while Hamas cites rubble and logistical challenges. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office reiterated that Israel will spare no effort to recover all deceased hostages. Okay, we're now joined by Ali Mohammed Abushbak. He's a Middle East researcher and he joins us live from Cairo. Ali, it's a pleasure to speak to you on this. Okay, of course, these are the latest on the ongoing ceasefire. We're currently in the first phase as Hamas and others try and retrieve Israeli bodies from rubble. 80% of Gaza has been destroyed, so obviously it is a challenging task for both Hamas and international helpers to retrieve the bodies of deceased hostages and those whose bodies still remain in Gaza. This is, of course, the first stage of the ceasefire in which Hamas is meant to return all the bodies of the deceased Israelis back to Israel. On average, around 15 Palestinian detainees and bodies are to be released with every single Israeli body which is returned back to the state of Israel. Now, of course, there has been ceasefire violation allegations on both sides during this, as the first phase of the ceasefire seems fragile enough, as the second stage negotiations continue. And of course, there are 5 hostage bodies left inside the enclave as bulldozers and diggers continue to try and retrieve the bodies of Israelis. 23 out of 28 are left in the enclave. Okay, we move over to Europe next. And the Kremlin is going to officially announce the date of Russian President Vladimir Putin's combined annual press conference and direct question and answer session. According to the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, the exact date of the event will be announced in due time, and they will use artificial intelligence, among other tools, to collect questions for the direct line with Putin 2 weeks before the event. Putin has been holding his annual televised direct line question and answer session with Russian citizens since 2001. In recent years, it was combined with his year-end press conference with Russian and international journalists. Okay, now joining us is Gilbert Doctorow. He's a Russia affairs expert, and he joins us live from Brussels. Gilbert, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. What is the significance behind President Putin's direct line session later? What does this weight does this event carry in regards to Moscow's communications and control?
Well, this is a very significant event that is closely watched not only by domestic mass media in Russia, but also by those of us who are interested in Russian affairs abroad. It is the most important single Q&A that President Putin has each year. This lasts over 4 hours customarily, and he receives questions from press correspondents that he knows well, and from many whom he hardly knows, both domestic and foreign. Usually, some time is reserved for major Western journalists to pose directly to Mr. Putin. We will all watch it closely. The overwhelming number of questions that are given to Mr. Putin concern domestic affairs in Russia. That is, pension questions, questions of how the inflation is affecting the economy, what is being done to alleviate shortages of one commodity or another. Like last year, it was eggs in particular that were in short supply. These domestic issues hardly interest us foreign observers, but we do find, if you have the patience to listen to Mr. Putin, you do find his comments on international affairs and on the war in Ukraine to be quite interesting and sometimes useful for our evaluation of the latest Russian state position.
Yes, and Gilbert, of course, Russia is often criticised for its alleged control of the media. What does this show about the transparency of the Russian government, that Vladimir Putin is there ready to accept questions from international media outlets like the BBC, CNN, etc.?
He has no difficulty handling these correspondents, whom he knows very well by name, since they've been there. That even like the BBC correspondent has been there for years.
Yeah.
As to control of the media, of course, the Russian state controls television, but there's nothing surprising in that. As if the BBC is not controlled by the Prime Minister's office in London, or Euronews is not controlled by Ursula von der Leyen, whose policies it is constantly projecting to the European public. So that isn't an issue. What is unique about the Russian-controlled television is that it gives every day very large digests of what the world press is saying. That is to say, if you watch the news roundups or if you watch major talk shows like 60 Minutes, you will be exposed to extensive excerpts from what the BBC is saying, from what the New York Times is saying, from what Deutsche Welle is saying. And these are not just what sound bites. They are real, substantial excerpts from reportage about the world and about events in Russia abroad. That is unique, and it stands in contrast to what goes on in the West, where nothing of Russian media is given to the public day by day. So the Russian government expects that its public, being well educated, will sort out for itself the logic or illogic of what the Western press is reporting.
Yes, indeed. Gilbert Doctorow, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. And here in NewsX World, of course, we will keep you updated on that direct line session with Vladimir Putin. But now, moving on, the United States' Supreme Court has allowed President Donald Trump's administration to temporarily withhold around $4 billion in federal food aid for November, leaving 42 million low-income Americans in need, uncertain about their benefits amid the nation's longest ever government shutdown. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson has issued the administrative stay, giving a lower court more time to assess the administration's request to only partially fund the Supplementary Nutrition Assistance Program. The SNAP program supports Americans whose income falls below 130% of the federal poverty line. The Supreme Court order pauses a ruling by a federal judge in Rhode Island that had required the government to immediately release the full amount of the funding. Joining us now is Gautam Mukherjee. He's a senior journalist who joins us live from New Delhi. Just give us a second until he joins us live. Of course, this is the 38th day of the US government shutdown, with numerous government agencies suffering, along with 42 million Americans who rely on this SNAP program. This otherwise known as food stamps, which Americans can use to hand in to grocery shops in exchange for food. Countless and countless Americans below the poverty line rely on these food stamps, and they have been suspended with the government shutdown. Okay, now joining us is Gautam Mukherjee. He's a senior journalist, and he joins us live from New Delhi. The Supreme Court, Gautam, has allowed President Trump's administration to temporarily hold back $4 billion in food aid. How significant is this decision for the 42 million low-income Americans that rely on SNAP or these food stamps?
Well, it's quite difficult for them, and Trump is doing this to put pressure on the Democrats, whom these people support. And, this is the longest shutdown that has been seen ever. And now the food aid as well, and I think a number of people are getting sacked. It's not a very happy situation for the ordinary folk in America.
Yes, Gautam, and of course many are suffering, including certain agencies which are going to work without pay. 20% of US flights are going to be cancelled due to the fact that there are no air traffic controllers here during this shutdown. Can you give us the wider implications of this government shutdown and the cause and havoc that it is causing in the United States right now?
The wider implications are fairly obvious. The government is broke and is trying to prevent further welfare activities foisted on them by the Democrat Party, and as a consequence, Trump is hanging tough and refusing to compromise. So it is a sort of Mexican standoff, if one may call it that.
Yes, indeed. And of course, critics say withholding aid during this, the longest government shutdown in US history, is worsening the risks of poverty and, of course, hunger. Could this deepen the public backlash about Washington's political gridlock?
It's beginning to. As you can see, a number of Democrats have won their elections. You're heading within a year to the midterm. I don't know how Trump is expecting to not lose quite a lot of power in the Congress and the Senate. When the midterms come about, the Democrats are reviving because of his attitude, and he is headed towards becoming a lame duck president in less than a year.
Yeah, and how does such legal delays affect public trust in these government institutions, especially when court decisions directly impact daily survival in the United States?
It's a sort of chaotic situation brought about by a very adamant president who refuses to compromise with the people across the aisle. And every time this has come up, now this bipartisan okay to raising the debt ceiling is something that happens every year. And usually both of them come to an understanding. The Democrats, if they're ruling, the Republicans extract a few concessions and vice versa. In this instance, the Republicans who are ruling are refusing to cooperate, and the Democrats are refusing to give up on their demands, and the general public is being hard done by.
Yes, indeed, and of course, this all stems from the Supreme Court. Justice Ketanji Jackson issued the administrative stay, giving a lower court more time to assess the administration's request to only partially fund the supplemental nutrition assistance program. Your thoughts on that, Gautam?
Well, the courts cannot rush a decision without taking into account all aspects, and so it is likely to be quite slow. But in the meantime, it is extremely tough for various programs which are at a standstill because there's no funding.
Yeah.
It's something that can only be addressed by government in a bipartisan manner, and they're not willing to do so. So it's a crisis.
Yes, indeed.
And an increasing crisis day by day.
Yes, indeed. Gautam Mukherjee, thank you very much for joining us here in the programme. It's always a pleasure to talk to you on these matters. We now move on next. And Indonesian police say they have found possible explosive powder as they investigate the blasts that occurred at a mosque in Jakarta during Friday's prayers. The explosions injured dozens of worshippers, and authorities say the incident may have been an attack. Police Chief Letsego Sigit Prabowo said the several pieces of evidence were discovered, including written materials and powder that could have caused an explosion. Investigators are also examining social media activity and speaking with the suspect's family to gather more information. The suspected perpetrator is a 17-year-old student from a school next to the mosque. He underwent surgery after the incident and is now recovering. Police say his improving condition will help the investigation move forward. Okay, Nobel Peace Prize winning American scientist James Watson, one of the co-discoverers of the structure of DNA, has died at the age of 97. Watson's death was confirmed by Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, which he worked and conducted research for decades before having to resign as its chancellor. In one of the greatest breakthroughs of the 20th century, he identified the double helix structure of DNA in 1953 alongside British scientist Francis Crick, setting the stage for rapid advances in molecular biology. Watson shared the Nobel Prize in 1962 with Maurice Wilkins and Francis Crick for the discovery of DNA's double helix structure. A deadly fire erupted early morning at a perfume warehouse in Dilovasi in northwest Turkey, claiming 6 lives and injuring 1, according to Regional Governor Ilhami Akas. Firefighters, rescue teams and municipal staff rushed to the scene and managed to bring the blaze under control. Images aired by Turkish channels showed 2 stories of the building completely destroyed. The cause of the fire remains unclear as authorities continue their investigation. Dilovasi, located about 70 kilometers from Istanbul, is an industrial town known for its depots and factories. UPS has temporarily grounded its fleet of MD-11 cargo planes following a crash near Louisville, Kentucky, that killed at least 13 people. The decision has affected MD-11 aircraft, the same model involved in Tuesday's crash, and was made out of an abundance of caution and in the interest of safety. The company has added that the grounding was recommended by the aircraft manufacturer. The crash has claimed the lives of all 13 people on board, including Captain Richard Wartenberg, First Officer Lee Truitt, and International Relief Officer Captain Dana Diamond. Federal investigators have reported that the plane's left wing caught fire and an engine detached shortly after takeoff from Louisville Muhammad Ali Airport, causing the aircraft to crash and explode. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating the plane's maintenance history. Flight data indicates the aircraft was in San Antonio, Texas for repairs from September the 3rd to October the 18th. The cockpit voice and flight data recorders, as well as the detached engine, were recovered from the crash site. Investigators plan to review the black box data, which appeared intact despite the fire. UPS expressed condolences to employees and the Louisville community and emphasized its priority is supporting those affected. Okay, of course, discussing this crash that happened just a few days ago. 13 killed in this crash in the United States. Compelling visuals of the crash circled online. Of course, we will bring you all the updates when we get to it. A UPS claim that killed 13 people. The decision has affected the same model on the crash, and out of an abundance of caution and safety in the interest of the safety, the company has added that the grounding was recommended by the aircraft manufacturer. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.